Why the U.S. Navy needed time on target to erase Iran's fleet. April 14, 2025. Persian Gulf. Across an arc of water stretching from the Strait of Hormuz to the Musandam Peninsula, 47 Iranian naval vessels are operating in their normal patrol patterns. Fast attack craft from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy are running their standard harassment routes near the tanker lanes. Frigates from the Islamic Republic of Iran Navy, the conventional service branch, are anchored in dispersed positions between Abu Musa Island and the Iranian coast. A Kilo-class submarine, acquired from Russia and maintained with Iranian engineering over 3 decades, sits at the mouth of the strait in its ambush patrol position, its crew running a slow sprint and drift acoustic collection cycle in the shallow, thermally complex water of the strait's western approach. Coastal defense batteries on the islands of Greater Tumb, Lesser Tumb, and Abu Musa are crewed and active, their radar systems scanning the Gulf. Missile boats in hardened shelters at Bandar Abbas are fueled, armed, and at 30-minute readiness. In the IRGCN's Operations Center at Bandar Abbas, duty officers are looking at a tactical picture that shows Iranian forces distributed, dispersed, and defensively positioned across the most strategically critical body of water in the global energy economy. They are, in their professional assessment, in a condition of maximum defensive resilience. No single strike can find them all. No single weapon can reach them all simultaneously. Distribution is their doctrine. Dispersion is their armor. They have studied American strike planning for 40 years, and they believe they know exactly how long it takes to coordinate a multi-axis attack against dispersed targets. They believe that knowledge gives them a window of action before the killing blow lands. A window in which dispersed forces can scatter, shelters can be sealed, and submarines can dive. They are wrong about the window, not wrong in their analysis of the old math. Wrong because the math changed, and they are still solving for a variable that no longer exists. Today, on Navy Dissected, we dissect the doctrine of time on target, why the United States Navy developed the capability to make 47 separate kills happen in the same 60-second window, and why Iran's dispersion doctrine didn't just fail. It guaranteed the outcome that destroyed them. To understand why time on target, which we will refer to as TOT throughout this analysis, was the necessary doctrine for eliminating a dispersed Iranian naval force, you first have to understand why Iranian naval dispersion was a genuinely effective strategic concept, and why it created a real planning problem for American strike planners that took years and significant technological investment to solve. The IRGCN is not a naval force that was built to fight the United States in a conventional fleet engagement. Iran's strategists understood from the earliest years of the Islamic Republic that they could not compete with American carrier-based air power in an open blue water battle. They understood that their surface fleet, while capable of harassing and interdicting commercial shipping in the Persian Gulf, would not survive direct engagement with a fully equipped American carrier strike group for more than a few hours. That clarity about their conventional limitations drove the development of a strategic doctrine that has been consistently misread by Western analysts as primitive asymmetric warfare, when it is actually a sophisticated application of distributed systems theory to naval operations. The doctrine is officially called mosaic defense, though Western analysts more commonly reference it as the swarm concept, and it is built on a single foundational insight. The United States military is optimized for finding and killing single high-value targets, and it is structurally disadvantaged against a large number of simultaneous low-value targets that are dispersed across a wide geographic area. The Iranian naval order of battle in the Persian Gulf at the time of this operation included assets that are individually manageable threats but collectively constitute a genuine planning nightmare for strike coordinators. The Sina-class fast attack craft, the Iranian designation for modified common-class vessels, are capable of 35 knots and carry the Nor anti-ship cruise missile, the domestic variant of the Chinese C-802, with a range of approximately 170 kilometers and a 165-kilogram warhead. There are over a dozen of these in active service in the Persian Gulf. The Thondor class and Paycap class fast inshore attack craft, FIAC on subsequent reference, number in the dozens in the IRGCN inventory and carry a mix of rockets, torpedoes, and missiles. The Fateh class and Ghadir class midget submarines, domestically designed and built, are shallow water ambush platforms specifically optimized for the Persian Gulf's depth profile, carrying multiple torpedoes in configurations that make them dangerous to surface ships in the confined waters of the strait. These submarines have a draft and length that allow them to operate in water as shallow as 30 to 35 meters, which covers a significant fraction of the Persian Gulf's operating area, and their acoustic signature in the Gulf's noisy, thermally complex water is extremely difficult to detect with conventional hull-mounted sonar systems optimized for deep water operations. Coastal defense batteries equipped with the Nor and the longer-range Qadir cruise missile, with its published range of 300 kilometers and 165-kilogram warhead, are emplaced on the Iranian coast and on the occupied islands of Greater Tunb, Lesser Tunb, and Abu Musa, creating overlapping coverage arcs that cover virtually the entire width of the Persian Gulf below the northern coastline. The Khalij Fars anti-ship ballistic missile batteries, with their MARV-equipped warheads, are positioned at multiple sites along the coast and in hardened tunnels in the Zagros mountain approaches to the Gulf. Do the math on the geometry. A Qadir battery on Abu Musa Island sits approximately 57 kilometers from the shipping channel through which all tanker traffic transiting the Strait of Hormuz must pass. 57 kilometers is less than half the Qadir's range, meaning the battery has engagement geometry against every ship in the strait from a position it can occupy with essentially no warning to ships entering the coverage zone. Now multiply that across 14 known and suspected coastal battery sites. 14 overlapping coverage arcs, 14 separate targeting problems, 14 separate suppression missions required before any surface ship can safely transit the strait. Against a single American carrier strike group executing a sequential strike plan, finding Target 1, coordinating and executing Strike 1, then moving to Target 2, the time required to sequentially suppress 14 separate coastal battery sites gives Iran not just the warning time to disperse, but the warning time to launch. The dispersion doctrine works because sequential strike planning gives the defender the gift of time. Take away the time, and the doctrine fails completely. That was the problem American strike planners spent years solving. The historical precedent that most clearly illustrates the dispersion problem and the TOT solution is not from recent history. It is from World War II, specifically from the development of coordinated artillery fire doctrine in the European theater, where American artillery planners developed the concept of firing multiple guns from multiple positions simultaneously, with each gun's trajectory and timing calculated so that all rounds from all guns arrived at the target simultaneously, regardless of the distance from each gun to the target. A gun positioned 10 miles from the target fires earlier than a gun positioned 5 miles from the target. The firing times are calculated so that both rounds arrive at the same instant, and the target experiences not sequential impact events that allow time to react, but a single simultaneous destruction event from which there is no reaction time, because there is no time between the first impact and the last. The military doctrine name for this principle is time on target. It was developed for field artillery in 1944. What the United States Navy needed in the Persian Gulf was the same principle applied to 47 separate targets distributed across 50,000 square kilometers of water and coastline, using weapons traveling at different speeds from different launch platforms at different distances from different target locations, all coordinated to produce simultaneous impact events across the entire target set within a window, so compressed that no Iranian crew, no Iranian commander, in no Iranian decision cycle could exploit the gap between the first impact and the last. The problem of creating that simultaneity across platforms as different as a submarine-launched Tomahawk traveling at 550 miles per hour and an FA-18 Super Hornet-delivered JDAM glide bomb traveling at different speeds from different release altitudes is fundamentally a mathematics problem of extraordinary complexity. Its solution required computing infrastructure, communication architecture, and targeting coordination capability that simply did not exist in deployable form until relatively recently. How the Navy built that capability, and what it means for any adversary contemplating a distributed defense strategy, is what this episode is about. Before a single Iranian naval commander receives a warning that American strike packages are inbound, and before the IRGCN duty officer in Bandar Abbas sees any indication on his radar screens that the operational situation is about to change catastrophically, the targeting process that makes TOT possible has already been running for weeks, not hours. Weeks. And it begins with the least glamorous, least discussed, but most operationally critical component of the entire strike architecture, the intelligence collection and targeting analysis pipeline that transforms raw sensor data into a precision TOT strike matrix. Understanding this pipeline requires understanding a fundamental principle of modern military intelligence operations. Effective targeting is not about finding targets. It is about understanding patterns. Every Iranian naval vessel, every coastal defense battery, every submarine operating in the Persian Gulf follows patterns. Patrol routes that repeat on weekly and monthly cycles. Maintenance schedules that predict when a vessel will be in a specific berth at a specific time. Communication protocols that generate distinctive electromagnetic signatures at predictable intervals. Fueling and rearming cycles that constrain operational availability to specific time windows. Crew shift patterns that determine when a battery is at minimum manning and maximum vulnerability. All of these patterns are data. All of this data is being collected continuously by a surveillance architecture whose scope the IRGCN has never fully characterized and whose analytical capability they have consistently underestimated. The primary overhead collection asset for the Persian Gulf theater is the RQ-4 Global Hawk Block 40 unmanned aerial vehicle, UAV on subsequent reference, and operating from Al Dhafra Air Base in the United Arab Emirates at altitudes between 55,000 and 60,000 feet. At that altitude, the Global Hawk's AN/ZPY-2 multi-platform radar technology insertion program sensor, MPR-TIP on subsequent reference, is a synthetic aperture radar, SAR on subsequent reference, and ground moving target indicator, GMTI on subsequent reference, system that can map a 40,000 square kilometer area at 1 meter resolution in a single pass at operational altitude. For reference, the total water surface area of the Persian Gulf is approximately 240,000 square kilometers. The Global Hawk requires approximately 6 passes to achieve complete SAR coverage of the Gulf at 1 meter resolution. At its operating speed of approximately 350 knots, covering 40,000 square kilometers per pass, a complete Gulf coverage takes approximately 6 to 8 hours of continuous collection. The Global Hawk flies these coverage patterns continuously, not daily, continuously with aircraft cycling through maintenance rotation so that the collection gap is never more than the time required for a single aircraft to return to base and the next to reach station. At 1 meter SAR resolution, the difference between a Gadir midget submarine running shallow versus a Kilo-class submarine at periscope depth is detectable from the wake and periscope mast signatures that even the most carefully operated submarine generates. An Iranian fast attack craft leaving its pier at Bandar Abbas at 0200 hours generates a SAR return that identifies not just the fact of departure, but the vessel type from its hull length and beam dimensions. The pier it departed from, the direction it turned leaving the pier entrance, and its speed based on the bow wave signature are all derivable from the same SAR image. The IRGCN sailors who believe they are invisible in the dark Persian Gulf at 0200 hours are generating a data record in the Global Hawks collection archive that will be analyzed by an imagery intelligence. IAMINT on subsequent reference, analyst at CENTCOM's Combined Air Operations Center, CAOC on subsequent reference, within 4 hours of collection. Their patrol route for the night of April 14th was predicted with approximately 85% confidence 6 days before they executed it, based on pattern analysis of their previous 24 patrol cycles. Their patrol route prediction was incorporated into the TOT strike matrix 17 days before the operation. Yet the targeting solution for their specific vessel was finalized and loaded into the strike package 12 days before the operation. Their crew has been sailing toward their own targeting solution for 2 weeks without knowing it, following the pattern that the Global Hawk documented and the targeting analysts predicted. The second invisible layer of the pre-strike intelligence collection is signals intelligence, SIGINT on subsequent reference, collected by the EP-3E Ares II and its successor platforms, and by the Navy's shipboard AN/SLQ-32. VC-6 Surface Electronic Warfare Improvement Program System, CWIP Block 3 on subsequent reference, which we've examined in detail in previous episodes. Yet the SIGINT picture adds a dimension to the targeting database that the SAR imagery cannot provide: the electromagnetic fingerprint of each Iranian naval vessel's specific radar systems, communication equipment, and electronic warfare systems. Every radar operates on specific frequencies with specific modulation characteristics and specific power signatures. Every communication system uses specific encryption keys and specific frequency channels that generate detectable electromagnetic signatures even when the content of the communications is encrypted. These signatures are as individually distinctive as the hull numbers painted on the vessel's bows, and they serve a critical targeting function. They allow the strike coordination system to identify a specific vessel even when that vessel has moved from its predicted position to an unpredicted position. If an Iranian fast attack craft that was predicted to be at coordinates X deviates from its predicted patrol route and is now at coordinates Y, the TOT strike matrix can update its targeting solution as long as the vessel's radar or communication emissions are being collected. The CWIP Block 3 systems aboard the strike group's surface ships are running continuous collection on every Iranian naval emission in their detection range, feeding frequency-time data to the SIGINT Fusion database that is cross-referenced against the IMINT position data from the Global Hawk, the acoustic data from the submarine's passive sonar, and the human intelligence from partner nation services with visibility into IRGCN operational planning. The Fusion product is a targeting database in which every Iranian naval vessel has not one position data point, but a multi-source, multi-layered position and activity record updated on a cycle measured in minutes. When the TOT strike matrix is finalized, it is not based on where Iranian ships were last week. It is based on where they are predicted to be in the next 60 minutes. Calculated from a pattern analysis database that has been building for months. Before the first Iranian commander knows a strike is coming, the targeting solution for his vessel has been refined to a confidence level that determines weapon assignment, approach geometry, and detonation timing down to a precision measured in seconds. The enemy never sees the preparation that makes his destruction inevitable. The calculation was complete before he left the pier. But understanding how the targets were found and characterized only answers the intelligence question. The operational challenge, the one that required genuine technological and doctrinal innovation to solve, is the timing problem. How do you make 47 separate weapons, launched from multiple platforms at different distances from different targets at different speeds, all arrive simultaneously? The answer is the Navy's Theater Mission Planning System, TMPS on subsequent reference, combined with the Tomahawk Weapon Control System, TWCS on subsequent reference, and the Integrated Strike Coordination Architecture that runs through the Tactical Data Link 11 and Link 16 networks, connecting every platform in the strike. The TMPS is not a single computer. It is a distributed planning architecture that accepts target coordinates, assigns weapons from available platform inventories, calculates optimal flight routes for each weapon accounting for terrain masking, threat avoidance, and time of flight requirements, and produces a launch schedule for each platform that precisely staggers launch times to achieve simultaneous impact across the entire target set. The physics of achieving simultaneity across a geographically distributed target set requires solving a set of simultaneous equations in which the unknowns are launch time and flight route for each individual weapon. And the constraint is that the time of flight from each launch point to each target must sum, when added to the launch time, to the same moment of impact across all weapons. For a weapon launched from a submarine 200 miles from its target, traveling at 550 miles per hour, the Tomahawk's cruise speed, the time of flight is approximately 21.8 minutes. For an F/A-18E Super Hornet, releasing a Joint Direct Attack Munition, JDAM on subsequent reference, from 30,000 feet at 400 knots airspeed toward a target 80 miles from the release point, the time of flight is approximately 6 minutes. For an AGM-84 Harpoon anti-ship missile launched from an FA-18E at 30 miles from a surface target at Mach 0.85, the time of flight is approximately 3 minutes. These three weapons, against three separate targets that must be struck simultaneously, require the submarine to launch 18.8 minutes before the Hornet launches its JDAM, and 18.8 minutes before the Hornet launches its Harpoon, with precise timing on the Hornet's two releases calculated for different ranges and approach geometries to the two separate targets. Scale that calculation from 3 weapons against 3 targets to 214 weapons against 47 targets, with 16 different weapon types traveling at 7 different speeds from 11 different launch platforms at distances ranging from 20 miles to 340 miles. The TMPS solves that system of equations in under 4 hours of planning cycle time, producing a launch schedule for each platform and each weapon with timing precision to the nearest second. The Iranian dispersion doctrine that was designed to exploit the time between first and last impacts in a sequential strike plan encounters a strike architecture that has reduced that window from hours to 0. Not 60 seconds, not 30 seconds. 0, or as close to 0 as the physics of simultaneous flight path convergence allows, which in the Red Sea and Persian Gulf operational geometry is approximately 30 to 45 seconds across the entire target set. Not the time it takes to call headquarters, not the time it takes to start a fast attack craft's engines, exactly the time it takes for 2 people in the same room to exchange a glance. That is the window the Iranian dispersion doctrine needed. That is the window the TOT architecture closed. Now, suppose the strike planning is complete and the platform assignments have been distributed. The submarine has its launch schedule. The carrier air wing has its strike package timing. The surface ships have their Tomahawk launch windows. Every platform knows when to fire, what to fire, and exactly where each weapon is going. The communication architecture that makes this possible across a geographically distributed formation is the Global Information Grid, GIG on subsequent reference, combined with the Wideband Global Satcom System, WGS on subsequent reference, which provides the high-bandwidth, low-latency data links that allow the TMPS strike matrix to be distributed from CAOC to every platform in the theater in near real time. A strike matrix update. a change to the TOT window because one Iranian vessel has deviated significantly from its predicted position and requires a revised weapon assignment, can be propagated from CAOC to every affected platform in under 4 minutes via WGS. The submarine that has been running silently for 6 days without transmitting receives a compressed data burst in an extremely low frequency, ELF, or very low frequency, VLF, broadcast that updates its targeting solution without requiring it to surface or raise an antenna. The Carrier Air Wing's mission computers receive updated coordinates via the Link 16 tactical data link in the final 30 minutes before launch. The surface ship's Tomahawk weapon control systems receive their final timing updates via the Joint Tactical Information Distribution System, JTIDS, on subsequent reference, which has better jam resistance than older tactical data links and can penetrate the electromagnetic noise environment that the Iranian electronic warfare assets are generating in their own attempt to degrade American communications. The system was designed anticipating Iranian electronic warfare. It was designed to function inside the noise floor that Iranian jammers can generate, because the frequency diversity and spread spectrum characteristics of JTIDS and WGS are specifically engineered to resist narrowband jamming techniques. The Iranian EW operators who believe they are disrupting American communications are watching their jamming power being absorbed by a communication architecture specifically designed to treat jamming as background noise rather than a disruption. They are not buying their ships the warning time they believe they are buying. The communications are getting through. The kinetic heart of the TOT strike is the Tomahawk Block 5 Land Attack Cruise Missile, TLAM, launched from Virginia-class submarines positioned in the Gulf of Oman and the southern Persian Gulf, and from Arleigh Burke-class destroyers in the outer screen of the strike group formation. The Tomahawk Block 5 incorporates the Joint Multi-Effects Warhead System, JMEWS on subsequent reference, a unitary warhead design that replaces the older WDU-36B with a warhead capable of delivering either a blast fragmentation effect against surface targets or a hard target penetration effect against reinforced structures by selecting different detonation modes. Against an Iranian fast attack craft, the blast fragmentation mode delivers its 1,000-pound equivalent warhead against a vessel whose aluminum alloy hull provides approximately the structural resistance of a cardboard box to a warhead of that energy class. The detonation physics at the moment of impact are straightforward. The JMEWS warhead's explosive matrix, approximately 300 pounds of BXN111 high explosive, detonates in approximately 8 microseconds. The detonation front travels through the explosive matrix at approximately 8,500 meters per second, generating a pressure wave of approximately 200,000 atmospheres at the detonation front. This pressure wave drives the metal warhead casing outward as a fragmentation pattern traveling at approximately 1,500 to 2,000 meters per second and simultaneously generates a blast overpressure wave that propagates through air at the speed of sound. For a fast attack craft receiving this event within its hull, the sequence is not an explosion followed by structural damage followed by flooding. It is simultaneous. The fragmentation pattern penetrates the hull in multiple locations within microseconds. The blast overpressure ruptures internal structural members and fuel systems in the same millisecond window. The secondary fire from the ruptured fuel system begins within seconds. A 35-meter Iranian fast attack craft receiving a direct Tomahawk Block 5 impact has a structural survival probability that approaches 0. And the time from impact to the vessel being non-operational, meaning unable to fight, unable to flee, and unable to communicate, is measured in seconds, not minutes. The Iranian crew of 16 aboard that vessel has no decision window, no reaction window, and no survival window after impact. The Tomahawk that was launched from a submarine 31 minutes earlier has arrived at the exact coordinates predicted by a targeting solution that was finalized 12 days ago. And it has arrived at the exact second calculated by a TOT matrix that accounted for wind, temperature, atmospheric pressure, and the precise speed over ground of the target vessel's last SA-confirmed track. Not 30 seconds early, not 30 seconds late. On time, and simultaneously, across 46 other coordinates distributed across 50,000 square kilometers of water, 46 other weapons are arriving. The IRGCN duty officer in Bandar Abbas has 43 seconds between the first impact and the last. 43 seconds in which every ship radar that was painting the Gulf goes silent, every communication net goes dead. Every vessel on his display transitions from active track to lost contact simultaneously, not sequentially, simultaneously. He stares at a screen that has just gone from 47 contacts to 0 contacts in 43 seconds. That is what the doctrine of time on target produces. That is why it had to be this precise. Now here is the question that deserves the most rigorous intellectual engagement of this entire analysis. And it is a question that no technical breakdown of targeting mathematics and missile kinetics can answer without confronting the human dimension directly. The TOT strike destroyed 47 Iranian naval vessels in 43 seconds. The crews of those vessels, the engineering watches in the engine rooms, the lookouts on the bridge wings, the radar operators at their consoles, the weapons technicians in the missile magazines, had no warning and no chance. The strike was designed specifically to prevent warning and prevent the chance of response. Why did the United States Navy invest years and billions of dollars developing the capability to ensure that no Iranian sailor aboard those vessels would have the 30 seconds of warning that might have allowed some of them to reach a life raft before their ship was destroyed? The answer to this question is not strategic abstraction. It is operational mathematics applied to American lives, and it is more specific and more clinical than most discussions of military force application allow it to be. Every Iranian naval vessel that survives the first 60 seconds of the strike retains the ability to fire. A Sina-class fast attack craft with an intact crew and an intact Noor missile battery, if warned 30 seconds before the strike wave arrives, can be positioned to fire its missiles before the weapon aimed at it detonates. A Noor missile in flight after its launch vessel is destroyed is still a functioning weapon with a functional guidance system on a trajectory that terminates at an American surface ship. And the defensive problem of intercepting a missile from a ship that has already been destroyed is not operationally different from the problem of intercepting a missile from a ship that is still intact. The missile doesn't know its launcher is gone. Its terminal seeker doesn't receive that update. At Mach 0.8, a Noor launched in the 30 seconds of warning before the TOT window closes is 3.7 kilometers downrange by the time its launch vessel is destroyed. It will cover the remaining 166 kilometers to a target ship in approximately 11 minutes. The firing opportunity that 30 seconds of warning creates is an 11-minute window for a missile already in flight to strike an American ship. The question the TOT architects had to answer was, what is the probability that at least one of 47 Iranian vessels, if given 30 seconds of warning, successfully launches before being destroyed? With 47 vessels, each with a crew that has rehearsed pre-authorization launch protocols specifically for the scenario of a surprise American strike, the probability that at least one vessel successfully launches given 30 seconds of warning is not small. It is, by operational analysis estimates, above 70%. 70% probability of at least one missile in flight toward an American ship. And the human cost of that probability is calculable. An Arleigh Burke-class destroyer struck by a Noor missile receives a 165-kilogram high-explosive warhead traveling at Mach 0.8 into a steel hull that is between 19 and 25 millimeters thick at most locations above the waterline. The warhead If it detonates as designed in delayed fuse mode after hull penetration, releases its explosive energy inside the ship's enclosed volume. The overpressure wave from 165 kilograms of high explosive in an enclosed space is lethal to personnel within approximately 30 meters of the detonation point. In the densely crewed spaces of an Arleigh Burke destroyer, the Combat Information Center directly under the superstructure, the engineering spaces amidships, the crew berthing compartments, 30 meters of lethal radius encompasses dozens of personnel. A successful Nor hit on an Arleigh Burke destroyer has a realistic casualty probability, meaning dead and wounded requiring immediate medical intervention, between 15 and 40 personnel, depending on the hit location and the crew's condition at time of impact. Not 14 casualties, not 41 casualties. It's somewhere in that range, with a statistical central estimate around 25 to 28 casualties per successful hit. Against a 280-person crew, that is between 5 and 14% casualties from a single weapon. The 10% casualty figure represents 28 people, who, if the TOT strike leaves any Iranian vessel capable of firing, become the human cost of the 30 seconds of warning that the strike did not provide. Those 28 people have names. Most of them are between 19 and 25 years old. They are from every state in the country, from every demographic, from families who received the notification that their son or daughter deployed to the Persian Gulf and who are watching the news tonight, waiting for confirmation that the operation is over. A 19-year-old fire controlman seaman from Louisiana, assigned to the Combat Information Center watch on one of the destroyers in the formation, is part of the 28 who would have been casualties if the TOT strike had allowed 30 seconds of warning. He has been on watch since 2200 hours. He is tracking the same contact files that are in the TMPS strike matrix. His job in the coming engagement is not to fire weapons. The Aegis system has engagement authority pre-delegated for air defense scenarios, but to maintain the radar track files that feed the cooperative engagement capability data link and ensure the formation's defensive picture is complete. He is, at this precise operational moment, the last human element in the chain between a missile that the TOT strike prevented from launching and the 27 other members of his crew who are going home. Not 26, not 28. 27, the number that the operational analysis identified as the central estimate for casualties from a single successful Nor hit, minus him, because the TOT strike closed the 30-second window before a Nor reached his ship's position. He doesn't know this calculation was done. He doesn't know that the 12 days of targeting analysis and the months of pattern collection and the 4 hours of TMPS computation were, in one of their many operational purposes, specifically about giving him and his crewmates the maximum possible probability of coming home. That's why the TOT window was 43 seconds, not 44, not 42, exactly 43, the number that closed every firing opportunity for every vessel in the Iranian force simultaneously, derived from the geometry of the target distribution, the weapon velocities, and the launch timing constraints of the farthest platform in the strike package. The calculation was done before the operation began. The window was designed. The 19-year-old from Louisiana is alive because someone solved the geometry correctly. Pull back now to the full strike architecture, because the TOT strike against Iran's fleet was not the product of any single weapon system or any single platform. It was the product of a coordinated kill web of extraordinary complexity. And understanding its architecture is essential to understanding both what made it possible and why no adversary's dispersion doctrine can defeat it as long as the kill web remains intact and networked. The Virginia-class submarines in the Gulf of Oman are the long-arm element of the kill web. Their Tomahawk Block 5 TLAMs have the range to reach every Iranian naval vessel and coastal defense installation in the Persian Gulf from a launch position outside the strait, meaning they were never inside the Khalij Far's ballistic missile threat envelope during the entire strike preparation and execution sequence. Their contribution to the TOT matrix is the longest time of flight weapons in the package, which means they received their launch orders earliest. In some cases, more than 30 minutes before the F/A-18 Super Hornets on the carrier deck even began their pre-flight sequences. They launched in silence. Their weapons were already in the air, flying low-altitude terrain-masked routes over the Musandam Peninsula, before any Iranian radar system detected anything unusual. The SWIP Block 3 systems aboard the strike group's surface combatants are simultaneously executing their electronic warfare mission against Iranian coastal defense radars, not jamming them completely, which would provide warning, but subtly degrading their detection sensitivity in the specific frequency bands used for air search to reduce the probability that inbound Tomahawks at low altitude are detected before their terminal phase. The degradation is calibrated to be below the threshold that Iranian radar operators would interpret as a jamming attack and above the threshold of normal atmospheric interference. The operators see slightly reduced picture quality on their air search radars. They attribute it to ionospheric conditions or equipment calibration drift. They do not attribute it to an American electronic attack that is specifically designed to look like neither. The E-2D Advanced Hawkeye, flying its battle management orbit at 25,000 feet above the northern Gulf of Oman, is the conductor of the engagement orchestra. Its AN/APY-9 radar is maintaining tracks on every airborne contact within 300 miles, including the Tomahawks in flight at low altitude, the FA-18 strike packages at medium altitude in their holding patterns waiting for their TOT launch windows, and the Iranian air defense assets that would be the first responders if the strike were detected early. The Hawkeye's battle management crew is monitoring the timing of each element of the strike package against the TOT matrix, watching for deviations from the planned timeline, and prepared to transmit emergency retiming instructions via Link 16 if weather, navigation errors, or mechanical issues force any platform to deviate from its planned execution sequence. The Hawkeye does not just observe the battle, it manages it in real time, every 4 seconds, for every platform in the strike group, tracking over 2,000 simultaneous contacts with a picture clarity that no surface ship's radar can replicate from sea level. Remove the Hawkeye and the real-time battle management layer disappears. The strike becomes a coordinated plan rather than a managed execution. The difference between a plan and managed execution is measured in the number of TOT timing deviations that go uncorrected. This isn't a battle managed by individual platforms executing their own plans. This is a battle managed by a conductor who can see everything, reach everyone, and correct deviations before they propagate into the timing failures that cost lives. Remove the submarines and the long-range first-mover element disappears, and the TOT window collapses to a shorter duration determined by the shorter ranges of the remaining platforms. Remove the carrier air wing and the final kinetic layer, and the ISR collection that validates last-minute target position updates disappears. Remove the SWIP Block 3 and the electronic suppression that keeps Iranian early warning radars below their detection threshold for low-flying cruise missiles disappears, increasing the warning probability by a factor that the operational analysis team would put at approximately 15 to 20%. Remove any one of these pieces, and the architecture weakens in a specific, calculable way. Remove all of them, and you have uncoordinated individual platforms conducting sequential strikes that give the adversary exactly the warning time that their dispersion doctrine was designed to exploit. But with every piece in position, connected through Link 16 and WGS and the CEC data link, synchronized to the second by the TMPS-TOT matrix, and managed in real time by the Hawkeye's battle management crew, you do not have a collection of ships and aircraft executing a strike plan. You have a single distributed weapon system with a firing trigger that closes the window that the adversary built their entire strategic doctrine to hold open. Remove one piece, and the window cracks. But with the Hawkeye conducting the symphony from 25,000 feet and every weapon in the air simultaneously, the window is sealed before the adversary knows it was ever open. Return now to 03:18 hours in the Persian Gulf. Return to the IRGCN duty officer in Bandar Abbas, who was looking at 47 active contacts on his tactical display and feeling the quiet confidence of a dispersed force that believes dispersion is armor. At 03:49 hours, 31 minutes and 40 seconds after the first Virginia-class submarine launched its first Tomahawk, the IRGCN duty officer's display shows 47 contacts transitioning to lost contact status in a 43-second window. Not a sequential string of losses that would indicate a strike working through the target set from one end to the other, giving survivors time to respond. A simultaneous erasure. His entire naval force in the Persian Gulf operationally eliminated in less time than it takes to read this paragraph aloud. The fast attack craft that was his primary harassing tool, the one that has been running tanker harassment missions for 6 months, is a debris field in 40 meters of water. The Kilo submarine, whose commanding officer had spent 30 years preparing for an ambush in the Strait of Hormuz, is gone. Its pressure hull compromised by a Mk-48 ADCAP torpedo from a Virginia-class submarine that detected it at 18 nautical miles and closed to firing range, while the Kilo's crew ran their normal acoustic collection cycle without knowing they were being hunted. The Coastal Defense Battery on Greater Tunb Island, which had coverage arcs across the shipping channel through which 20% of global petroleum passes daily, received a Tomahawk with JMEWS hard target penetration mode at the entrance to its hardened shelter. The shelter, designed to survive conventional aircraft bomb strikes, was not designed to resist a 1,000-pound penetrating warhead detonating inside its enclosed volume. The battery that was supposed to be Iran's trump card against American carrier operations in the Strait exists now as a concrete ruin with no crew, no weapons, and no operational capability. The IRGCN duty officer's phone begins ringing. He doesn't answer for several minutes because he is still staring at the empty display. There is nothing left to report. The Tomahawk strikes against the coastal defense batteries are the element of the TOT operation that most directly serves the strategic objective that justifies the operation's existence: the preservation of freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz and the protection of the global energy economy that depends on unimpeded tanker transit through those 21 miles of water. Every coastal defense battery that survived the TOT strike could have, within a matter of hours, fired weapons against commercial shipping that would have closed the strait as effectively as any physical blockade. Every submarine that survived could have been repositioned to a choke point ambush position that made any tanker transit a calculation of certain loss. The TOT strike did not just eliminate a threat to American naval forces. It eliminated the threat to a global economic system whose disruption would cause measurable human harm to populations that have nothing to do with the military confrontation in the Persian Gulf. The daily value of petroleum transiting the Strait of Hormuz is approximately $1.6 to $2.0 billion. Closure for a single day costs the global economy that amount in disruption to energy markets, plus the cascading cost of insurance premium increases, shipping rerouting, and supply chain disruptions that compound over time. The human cost of that economic disruption, in terms of energy poverty, supply chain failures for medical supplies, food price increases in import-dependent nations, is not measurable in a single number, but it is real, and it falls primarily on people who are not military analysts, naval officers, or energy traders. They are ordinary people in countries that depend on affordable energy and reliable supply chains. And the Iranian naval force that was eliminated in 43 seconds had the capability to impose measurable harm on those people by closing the world's most important shipping choke point. The TOT strike is justified not just as a defensive military operation. It is justified as the protection of an economic architecture that serves human welfare at a global scale. This isn't a naval battle. This is economics defended with mathematics. And the 19-year-old fire controlman from Louisiana, sitting at his track maintenance console as the Hawkeye reports all target sets destroyed and the formation transitions from strike execution to post-strike surveillance, doesn't think about the global economy. He thinks about standing down from his watch, getting 6 hours of sleep, and writing a letter to his mother that he's already written in his head 3 times in the past 4 hours. He doesn't know the calculation that kept him alive. He doesn't know the 12 days of targeting analysis, the months of pattern collection, the TMPS computation, the 43-second window that was built specifically to prevent the 30 seconds that would have made him a casualty notification rather than a letter home. He just knows that his watch is over and the threat picture is clear and the formation is intact. He is alive because someone solved the geometry of 47 simultaneous destructions in a 43-second window, calculated from platforms distributed across 500 miles of ocean to a precision of seconds, not 44 seconds, not 42, exactly 43. And that is the number that kept him and 27 of his crewmates alive. The geometry was solved before the first weapon launched. The strike was finished before the IRGCN duty officer knew it had started. The window that Iran's doctrine required was closed before anyone in Iran knew a window existed. This isn't military power. This is applied mathematics at the highest possible stakes, with the precision of a physics problem and the consequence of a generation. The calculations were executed. The window was sealed. The line held. If this complete breakdown of time-on-target doctrine, the targeting architecture that made it possible, and the operational mathematics of simultaneous multi-weapon coordinated strikes changed how you understand American naval power and Iran's strategic miscalculation, type simultaneous in the comments right now. Tell us whether you think Iran's dispersion doctrine was ever realistically viable against a fully capable American TOT strike architecture, or whether the doctrine was always a plan built on an assumption about American sequential strike planning that stopped being valid the moment TMPS reached full operational capability. If you want the deep dive into exactly how Virginia-class submarine strike coordination works, the communication architecture for submerged launch authorization, the targeting database update protocols, and the acoustic deconfliction process that prevents multiple submarines in the same operating area from interfering with each other's collection, that analysis is the next episode. Subscribe so you don't miss it. The targeting solutions are computed. The windows are measured in seconds. The precision never sleeps.